Hello.
After 22 years of what I thought was a rock-solid marriage, I discovered my wife's secret life with her true soulmate. But when my own daughter looked me in the eyes and told me Mom deserved happiness with another man, something inside me snapped. I walked into that courtroom and shocked everyone with what I did next. 3 years later, when they both came crawling back, they discovered exactly what kind of man they had betrayed. My name is Neil Elliott. I'm 45 years old. And until last year, I thought I had it all figured out. A successful small business I'd built from scratch, a beautiful home in the suburbs of Portland, a wife of 22 years, and a daughter who was the pride of my life. The American dream, right? That's what everyone saw from the outside. I met Irene during my final year at Oregon State. She was studying journalism, fiercely intelligent with this laugh that could light up a room. I still remember the first time I saw her in the campus coffee shop, typing furiously on her laptop, completely oblivious to everything around her. It took me 3 visits and a deliberately spilled coffee to finally get her attention. When she looked up, annoyed at first, then breaking into a smile, I knew I was a goner. We were young, maybe too young, but we were so certain. 8 months after our first date, I proposed on the waterfront during a summer festival. The ring had cost me 3 months of savings from my part-time job, but the look on her face made every penny worth it. "Are you sure?" she'd asked, tears streaming down her face. "We have our whole lives ahead of us." "That's exactly why I'm sure," I told her. "I want to spend that whole life with you." A year later, Cassandra came along. We hadn't planned to have kids so soon, but when Irene told me she was pregnant, it felt right. I can still picture holding my daughter for the first time, this tiny, perfect human with Irene's eyes and my stubborn chin. In that moment, I made a silent promise to give her the world. The early years were a beautiful kind of chaos. I was just starting my landscaping business, working 14-hour days while Irene finished her degree and took care of Cassandra. We lived in a tiny apartment where you could hear the neighbors arguing through the paper-thin walls. We were broke most of the time, eating ramen and counting pennies until payday. But man, we were happy. There's something about struggling together that bonds you. Every small victory was celebrated. Landing a new client, Irene selling her first freelance article, Cassandra taking her first steps across our cramped living room. "We're building something real here," Irene would say, curled against me on our second-hand couch after Cassandra had finally fallen asleep. "Something that'll last." I believed her with every fiber of my being. We were the couple that made it work, the ones who'd grow old together on some porch swing, surrounded by grandkids and memories. By the time Cassandra turned 16, Elliott Landscaping had contracts all over the city. Irene had worked her way up to features editor at the Portland Tribune. We bought the house, taken family vacations, set up a college fund. We'd made it, or so I thought. What I didn't know then was that the foundation we'd built our life on wasn't as solid as I believed, and it wouldn't take much for everything to come crumbling down around me. After 22 years of marriage, you develop a sixth sense about your partner. Like how I could tell when Irene was upset by the way she loaded the dishwasher. All precise movements and careful arrangements instead of her usual haphazard approach. That's why I noticed when she started staying late at the office 3 nights a week. "Big story," she'd say, dropping her bag by the door well after dinner had gone cold. Her excuse made sense. She'd recently been assigned to investigate corruption in the city council, but something felt off. I'd built my landscaping company by trusting my instincts. When a slope looked unstable, I'd reinforce it, even if the client complained about the extra cost. Those same instincts were now screaming at me. One night, after finishing a major project for the city's new Riverside Park, a contract that had taken my team 6 grueling months to complete, I decided to surprise Irene at her office. I picked up takeout from her favorite Thai place and headed downtown. The Tribune building stood nearly empty at 9 p.m. The security guard, who recognized me from company parties, waved me through with a friendly nod. "7th floor's mostly dark, Mr. Elliott. Not sure if your wife's still here." I found the features department silent and dark, except for a single desk lamp in the corner office. Through the glass door, I could see Irene on the phone, laughing in a way she hadn't laughed at home in months. My hands tightened around the takeout bag. I could have barged in, demanded answers. Instead, I stepped back into the shadows and watched. She was different somehow, animated, alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. When she hung up, she stared at her phone for a long moment, a small smile playing on her lips. Then she typed something quickly and set it down. I slipped away before she could spot me, dumping the untouched food in a trash can outside. That night, I lay beside her in bed, listening to her breathing and wondering who had been on the other end of that call. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. While Irene was in the shower, I checked her phone. Nothing suspicious in her recent calls or texts. Either I was paranoid, or she was being careful. 2 days later, I got my answer. Cassandra borrowed my truck to move some furniture to her campus apartment. When she returned, she handed me back my keys along with a credit card receipt she'd found in the console. "Dad, why were you at the Riverview Hotel last Friday? I thought you were at that landscaping convention in Seattle." I hadn't been to either place, but I knew exactly who had been using my company credit card. I'm not a man who makes decisions without solid evidence. After 20 years building a business, I'd learned to investigate thoroughly before taking action. So I hired Mike, an ex-cop buddy who owed me a favor after I'd landscaped his entire property at cost. "You sure about this, Neil?" Mike asked as we sat in his truck outside the Tribune. "Once you know, you can't unknow." "I need the truth," I answered, my jaw set. The credit card receipt showed a hotel charge when I was supposedly out of town. Either someone had stolen my card, or Irene was meeting someone and covering her tracks. After a week of surveillance, Mike called me during a client meeting. "You need to see this," he said, his voice grim. "They're at Riverview again." I excused myself, telling my foreman to handle the rest of the presentation. Within 20 minutes, I was pulling into the hotel parking lot. Mike pointed to a silver Audi parked in the corner. "That's not her car," I said, frowning. "No, but she arrived in a cab 40 minutes ago. The Audi belongs to this guy." He handed me his camera with a telephoto lens. Through it, I saw a tall man with salt and pepper hair checking his watch before entering the hotel. Something about him seemed vaguely familiar. "His name's Damon Reeves," Mike said, "editor at Seattle Sentinel. Apparently, he and Irene worked together years ago." The name hit me like a physical blow. Damon, the guy she'd dated before me, whose name she'd occasionally mention with a distant look in her eyes. The one who'd moved to Seattle for his career just before we met. "I've seen enough," I said, handing back the camera. That night, I didn't confront Irene. Instead, I scheduled a meeting with our longtime family therapist, Dr. Winters. I told Irene it was about my stress managing the business expansion. She agreed readily, probably relieved I hadn't questioned her overnight conference story. During our session, Dr. Winters asked about our relationship. "Honestly," I said, looking directly at Irene, "I feel like something's changed between us." She shifted uncomfortably. "We've both been busy. It's just a phase. Is there anything else going on, Irene?" Dr. Winters asked gently. "Anything Neil should know?" That's when it happened. Irene glanced at her phone as it buzzed with a text. Something in her expression cracked. "I've been in touch with someone," she admitted, not meeting my eyes. "An old friend." "Damon Reeves isn't just an old friend," I said quietly. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. "How did you? Does it matter? What matters is you've been lying to me, using my credit card to pay for your hotel rooms." Dr. Winters tried to mediate, but Irene suddenly stood up. "I'm sorry you found out this way, but maybe it's for the best," she said, her voice stronger now. "Damon and I have reconnected, and I've realized something I've been denying for years. He's always been the one for me, Neil. What we had, it was good, but it wasn't right." I sat there, 22 years of marriage disintegrating before my eyes. As my wife told me, I'd been her consolation prize all along. The drive home from Dr. Winter's office was silent, heavy with 2 decades of memories suddenly recontextualized. Every anniversary, every vacation, every quiet Sunday morning, all of it felt like sand slipping through my fingers. At home, Irene immediately started packing a suitcase. "That's it?" I asked, standing in the doorway of her bedroom. 22 years, and you're just walking out?" She paused, a folded sweater in her hands. "I didn't plan for this to happen. Damon reached out about a potential job opening at the Sentinel. It was supposed to be just professional networking, and ended up being much more personal." I finished. The control in my voice surprised even me. Inside, I was a hurricane, but outwardly, I remained the steady, practical man I'd always been. "I think I've loved him all this time," she whispered, almost to herself. "When he left for Seattle, I tried to move on. With you, I built a good life, a comfortable life. But seeing him again, save it. I cut her off. I'm not interested in being your silver medal. I walked out of the room and found myself in Cassandra's old bedroom, now a guest room, but still full of her debate trophies and childhood photos. My daughter, would she even understand? As if summoned by my thoughts, the front door opened. Cassandra called out, "Mom? Dad, why are both your cars here in the middle of the day?" Irene emerged from our bedroom, eyes red but chin high. "Cass, honey, we need to talk." I watched my daughter's face as Irene explained her reconnection with Damon, how she believed she'd been meant to be with him all along. With each word, Cassandra's expression shifted from confusion to understanding, but not the reaction I expected. "Does this mean you're finally going to be happy, Mom?" she asked, taking Irene's hands. "I think so, sweetheart," Irene replied, tears spilling over. Cassandra turned to me, her eyes, so like her mother's, full of a strange mixture of pity and accusation. "Dad, you've always been so focused on the business, on providing. Maybe you didn't see Mom was unhappy." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. My own daughter, who I'd moved heaven and earth for, was siding against me without even hearing my side. "You don't know everything, Cass," I said, my voice low. "I know Mom deserves happiness," she replied firmly. "If she's found out with Damon after all these years, isn't that what matters?" In that moment, watching my wife and daughter united against me, something hardened in my chest. The foundation I'd spent my life building hadn't just cracked. It had completely collapsed. "You've been cheating on me," I finally said, my voice cutting through the room like steel. "After 22 years of marriage, you betrayed everything we built. And now our daughter is applauding you for it." I grabbed my keys and wallet. "You two clearly have this all figured out. I'm done." I spent 3 nights at the Timber Lodge Motel on the outskirts of Portland, surrounded by truckers and traveling salesmen. The dated wood paneling and buzzing vending machines fit my mood perfectly, weathered, functional, without pretense. On the 4th morning, I returned to the house while Irene was at work. I needed documents, clothes, and time to think without emotional confrontations. What I found instead changed everything. While gathering financial record from the home office safe, I discovered a sealed envelope marked DR Personal. Inside was a stack of letters spanning back 15 years, all from Damon Reeves to my wife. They'd never completely lost touch. Each letter was carefully preserved, some with tear stains, others with handwritten notes in the margins. The most recent, dated 6 months ago, mentioned his divorce finalization and included the phrase, "Perhaps fate is giving us another chance." My hands didn't shake. My breathing remained steady. 20 years of handling business crises had taught me to compartmentalize. But inside, something fundamental shifted. The last shred of doubt about whether this was a recent development or a long-standing deception. As I finished packing, Cassandra showed up unexpectedly. She froze in the doorway of my home office. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Getting what I need," I answered, closing my briefcase. "Mom's worried about you," she said, blocking my path. "You can't just disappear." "Worry?" I laughed, the sound hollow even in my own ears. "Your mother's been in love with another man for our entire marriage, Cass." I held up the envelope. "Prove it." She took the letters, her confidence faltering as she scanned the dates and content. "But," she said, "they only reconnected recently. Life lesson, kiddo. People lie. Even parents." Her eyes welled with tears. "But you and Mom were happy. I remember." "We were," I agreed, my voice softening slightly. "Or at least I was. That's what makes this worse. What are you going to do?" "The only thing I can do. Move forward." "But this is your home," she protested. "You built this place. You can't just give up everything." I looked at my daughter, so intelligent yet so naive. "This stopped being my home the moment your mother decided I was second best. And I'm not giving up. I'm choosing my own path forward." I showed her the stack of legal documents I gathered. "Tomorrow, I'm filing for divorce. I've already spoken with my attorney. Your mother can have the house. I'll start fresh." "But what about me?" Cassandra asked, suddenly looking very young. "You made your choice pretty clear, Cass. You think your mom deserves happiness with her true love. I won't stand in the way of that fantasy." I kissed her forehead and stepped around her, carrying my briefcase and duffel bag. Behind me, I heard her quietly sobbing as she continued reading the letters. Evidence of a betrayal spanning not months, but decades. As I pulled away from the house I'd built, landscaped, and filled with dreams, I didn't look back. Men like me don't break. We rebuild. The county courthouse was quiet that Tuesday morning. My attorney, Sandra Matthews, met me on the granite steps, briefcase in hand and determination in her stride. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Neil?" she asked, her voice low. "Full dissolution, minimal negotiation, no fault filing?" "Completely," I replied. "I built my business by knowing when to cut losses and move on. Same principle applies here." Inside, we filed the necessary paperwork to initiate the divorce. No drama, no scenes, just the methodical dissolution of 22 years, reduced to forms and signatures. As we were leaving, fate had other plans. Irene was walking up the steps, her own attorney in tow. She stopped short when she saw me, color draining from her face. "Neil." My name sounded strange on her lips now. "I was coming to file." "Already done," I said calmly. Her attorney, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit, exchanged glances with Sandra. "Perhaps we should discuss settlement terms now that both parties are present." We relocated to a small conference room, the four of us seated around a polished table that reflected our distorted images. "My client is prepared to be quite generous," Irene's attorney began. "She understands the disruption this has caused and—" "I don't want anything," I interrupted. "She can keep the house, her retirement accounts, everything in her name. I'll take my business, my personal accounts, and the items I've already removed from the house." Irene stared at me. "You can't be serious. After 22 years, After 22 years, you chose someone else," I finished. "I'm simply honoring your choice by removing myself completely." Her attorney tried to argue that I was entitled to more, but Sandra had my instructions. We laid out my terms: a clean break, no alimony in either direction, and minimal ongoing contact. As the attorneys discussed details, Irene leaned toward me. "What about Cassandra? She's devastated." "Is she?" I raised an eyebrow. "Last I checked, she was celebrating your newfound happiness with your soulmate." "That's not fair." "She's caught in the middle." "No, she chose a side. Just like you did." The door opened suddenly, and Cassandra herself burst in, eyes red from crying. "Dad, Mom, stop this. How did you know we were here?" Irene asked. "Chelsea called me. She's in my English Lit class, and her dad is going through something similar. We've been talking." I exchanged a glance with Sandra, who nodded slightly. "Give us the room, please," I said to the attorneys. When they left, I turned to my daughter. "This doesn't concern you, Cass. The divorce is between your mother and me." "Doesn't concern me," she repeated incredulously. "You're my parents, and you're giving up everything, Dad. The house, half of everything you worked for." "I'm giving up nothing that matters," I said firmly. "I built my business from nothing once. I can do it again. What I won't do is fight over material possessions with a woman who's been emotionally unfaithful for our entire marriage." I stood, straightening my jacket. "In court today, I'm giving up my legal rights as a husband. But make no mistake, I'm gaining something more valuable: my self-respect." 6 months after the divorce, Elliott Landscaping had expanded to 3 neighboring counties. I threw myself into work, securing contracts for 2 major municipal parks and a high-end residential development. My crew had doubled in size, and I'd moved into a modest but comfortable condo overlooking the Willamette River. I'd chosen a clean slate over a bitter battle, and it was paying off. No looking back, no dwelling on betrayal, just forward momentum and hard work. That strategy served me well until Thanksgiving, when an unexpected visitor arrived at my office. "Your secretary said I could wait," Cassandra said, rising from the leather couch in my office. She looked thinner, with dark circles under her eyes. "You've been dodging my calls." "Been busy," I replied, setting down my blueprints. "The Monroe project is breaking ground next week." "Dad," she stepped closer, "Mom sold the house." I raised an eyebrow. "That was part of the agreement. It's her property now. She and Damon are moving to Seattle. They used the money to buy a condo near his office." Her voice was tight with something I couldn't quite identify. Anger, perhaps, or disappointment. "She didn't even consult me." "You're 20, Cass. An adult." She doesn't need your permission. That was our home, she burst out. Every memory I have is in that house. My height marks on the kitchen wall, the tree fort you built me, the garden we planted together, all gone to strangers now. I sighed, leaning against my desk. Those are just places, kiddo. The memories stay with you. Easy for you to say. You walked away from everything without a backward glance. My casual facade cracked slightly. Is that what you think? That it was easy? I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a small wooden box, the only personal item in my otherwise utilitarian office. This is all I kept. Inside were a handful of items. Cassandra's first baby tooth, her kindergarten drawing of our family, the Father's Day card she'd made when she was 10, and a small jar of soil from the backyard where we'd buried her pet hamster with full honors when she was 8. I didn't walk away from what mattered, I said quietly. I just refused to fight over the rest. Her eyes filled with tears. I was wrong, Dad. About everything. I found Mom's old journals after you left. She's been writing to Damon for years, even when they weren't in direct contact. She called you her safe choice, her comfortable compromise. She wiped her eyes angrily. How could she write that? After everything you did for us. I closed the box gently. People see what they want to see, Cass. Your mother needed to believe she'd sacrificed her true love for duty. It made her the tragic heroine of her own story. And I bought it completely, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Dad. You're here now, I said simply. That's what matters. Can we start over somehow? I looked at my daughter, the one person I'd truly built my life around, and felt something rigid inside me begin to soften. How about dinner? I offered. There's a decent steakhouse down the block. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was a foundation, and if there's one thing I know, it's how to build on solid ground. A year after the divorce, I received an unexpected email from Mike, my ex-cop friend who'd helped uncover Irene's affair. Thought you should see this, his message read, with a link to the Seattle Sentinel's website. The article was a profile of Damon Reeves, recently promoted to executive editor, with a beaming Irene, now Irene Reeves, on his arm at some charity function. The piece mentioned their whirlwind romance and marriage, as if their history didn't stretch back decades. I closed the browser without finishing the article. Their fiction wasn't my concern anymore. That evening, I met Ryan Johnston, a commercial developer I'd been courting as a client, at an upscale restaurant downtown. His planned eco-friendly shopping center could be my biggest contract yet. Impressive proposal, Ryan said, sliding the portfolio back across the table. But I'm still talking to Westlake Designs. They underbid you by 15%. Westlake uses non-native plants that look good initially but struggle in Oregon's climate, I explained. Their irrigation systems are inefficient. In 3 years, you'll spend double maintaining what they install. Ryan studied me with new interest. Most guys would just cut their profit margin to get the contract. I don't compete on price, I replied, signaling the waiter for another bourbon. I compete on value and integrity. My work lasts. Straight shooter, Ryan laughed. I like that. Let me think it over. As he left to take a call, the restaurant hostess approached with a familiar figure in tow. Dad, Cassandra exclaimed. I thought that was you. She was with a young man who looked vaguely familiar. Dad, you remember Jason Miller? From my environmental policy seminar. The clean-cut young man extended his hand. Mr. Elliott, good to see you again, sir. After awkward introductions, I invited them to join me. As Ryan returned, Cassandra smoothly engaged him in conversation about sustainable building practices, a topic she'd absorbed from years of dinner-table discussions about my business. By dessert, Ryan was impressed enough to shake my hand firmly. Elliott Landscaping gets the contract. Your daughter here sealed the deal. Anyone who raised such a knowledgeable young woman clearly does quality work. After he left, Cassandra beamed. Did I just help you land a major client? You did. I acknowledged, feeling a surge of pride. You always did have your old man's head for business. Speaking of business, she hesitated, exchanging glances with Jason. I've been thinking about my future plans. Graduate school? I guessed. Actually, I was wondering if Elliott Landscaping has ever considered expanding into environmental consulting. With climate change concerns, businesses need guidance on sustainable landscaping practices. It could be a whole new division. I studied my daughter, confident, intelligent, and showing the same entrepreneurial spark I'd had at her age. Interesting proposition, I said carefully. Would need someone dedicated to building that division from the ground up. I have some ideas, she replied, her eyes hopeful, if you're willing to hear them. For the first time in over a year, I felt something long dormant awakening. Not just pride in my daughter, but excitement about the future. Not a return to what was lost, but something new taking root. I'm listening, I said, meaning it fully for the first time since the divorce. 2 years after the divorce, Elliott Environmental Consulting was thriving under Cassandra's leadership. What began as a tentative proposal over dinner had grown into a profitable division of my company, with 3 full-time employees and contracts with some of Oregon's largest developers. On a crisp autumn morning, I stood with Cassandra at the ribbon cutting for the Monroe Eco Center, the sustainable shopping complex that had marked the beginning of our professional partnership. Mr. Elliott, Ryan Johnston approached us, champagne flute in hand. Your team exceeded expectations. The city council's already talking about using your firm for the riverfront redevelopment. That would be my daughter's department, I replied, nodding toward Cassandra. She designed the rainwater collection system everyone's raving about. As Ryan pulled Cassandra into a discussion with some investors, I stepped away to take in the scene. The terrace gardens, native plantings, and stone pathways all bore my company's signature quality, but the innovative water features and solar integration were pure Cassandra. You must be very proud, a woman's voice said beside me. It's beautiful work. I turned to find an attractive woman in her early 40s, studying the landscaping with an appreciative eye. Something about her seemed familiar. Linda Mercer, she introduced herself. I'm the new urban planning director for the city. We met briefly at the proposal meeting last month. Neil Elliott. I shook her hand. And yes, I am proud, though I can't take credit for the whole design. The daughter I've heard so much about, she asked, smiling. The environmental wunderkind. That's her, I confirmed. Best decision I ever made was bringing her into the business. Linda's gaze was direct, intelligent. Second chances are rare in families. Not everyone gets them. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Mike. Saw this in the paper today. Thought you should know. Attached was a news article about layoffs at the Seattle Sentinel. Among those let go was executive editor Damon Reeves, described as recently divorced. I closed the message without comment. Bad news, Linda asked, noting my expression. Ancient history, I replied, tucking the phone away. Nothing that matters anymore. We walked together through the garden terraces, discussing native plant species and water conservation. When she mentioned having recently relocated from California after her own divorce, I found myself suggesting coffee sometime to welcome her to Portland. 5 years ago, I thought I had life figured out. 2 years ago, I believed I'd never trust anyone again. But standing in this place built from new beginnings, I recognized something I'd almost forgotten. The future remains unwritten, even after the most painful chapters. When Linda smiled and accepted my invitation, I felt something long dormant stir back to life. Not the desperate passion of youth, but something steadier, something built on solid ground. 5 years to the day after my divorce was finalized, I stood in the backyard of my new home in the West Hills, surrounded by friends, employees, and family. String lights twinkled in the trees I'd carefully selected and planted myself, illuminating the terrace garden that had become my personal sanctuary. Speech, called Ryan Johnston, raising his glass. In the years since the Monroe Project, he'd become both a major client and a close friend. I wasn't one for public speaking, but some occasions warrant the effort. Linda squeezed my hand encouragingly as I cleared my throat. 5 years ago, I thought my life was ending. I began looking around at the faces gathered on the patio. Instead, it was just beginning a new phase. Like any good landscape design, sometimes you need to clear the ground before you can build something better. Laughter rippled through the group. My team from Elliott Landscaping and Environmental Consulting raised their glasses in agreement. In the past 5 years, our company has tripled in size. My daughter has revolutionized how we approach environmental design. I nodded toward Cassandra, who stood with her fiancé Jason near the fire pit I'd built last fall. And I've learned that second chances come in unexpected forms. I turned to Linda, whose engagement ring caught the firelight. After 2 years of dating and 1 year living together, we decided to make it official last month. No grand gestures or dramatic proposals. Just two people who had weathered their own storms, choosing to build something together. Later, as guests began to depart, Cassandra found me by the stone wall that marked the property's edge. She would have been proud of you, you know, she said quietly. Your mother. I asked, surprised. No. Cassandra shook her head. My grandmother. Your mom. She always said you were a builder of heart. Not just with your hands, but with your life. The mention of my mother, gone 10 years now, brought a lump to my throat. She was a wise woman. I got a letter from Mom last week, Cassandra continued. She's back in Portland, teaching journalism at the community college. Damon's out of the picture completely. Are you going to see her? I asked, careful to keep my tone neutral. Eventually, she sighed. But I'm not rushing into anything. Some foundations take time to rebuild. I nodded, understanding completely. No matter what happens with your mother, you know where home is now. As we walked back toward the house where Linda was saying goodnight to the last guests, I felt a profound sense of completion. Not because everything was perfect, life never is, but because I'd rebuild on my own terms, with my own hands. The man I'd become in these 5 years was stronger than the one Irene had left, not despite the betrayal, but because of how I'd chosen to respond to it. The best revenge wasn't bitterness or retaliation, but creating a life so full that the past became just that, the past. Ready to head in? Linda asked, slipping her arm through mine. Absolutely. I replied, meaning it in every possible way.
Bye.